Welcome back to the Powerhouse Podcast. I'm Clayton Collins, CEO at HousingWire, and your host for this show. My guest today is Mr. Nathan Knottingham, and we scheduled this episode to talk about the company which Nathan recently founded, MLO Force. But the agenda and the topic for the show took a big turn this week when I woke up Monday morning to a text and then pictures in my social feed of Nathan and his partners, Isabel William and Christopher Griffith, on the floor of the NASDAQ with a pretty special picture announcing a deal that we go deep into in this conversation. We also talk about the launch of MLO Force, and we talk about bringing better education to willing learners in the mortgage industry. Nathan has an incredible background, a ton of expertise, in a very engaging way of talking about teaching and learning inside of the mortgage industry. I hope you enjoy this episode with Nathan Knottingham, the founder and CEO of MLO Force. Nathan, I'm jumping right into the hard questions here, man. So we scheduled this podcast to talk about mortgage education and continued ed, and we're going to get to that. But we're going to start out with a different topic. So I woke up this Monday morning, I believe, to some pictures hitting me via text and also on social media of you and Christopher Griffith and Isabel Williams in New York City. Why were you in New York, and what were those pictures of?
You know, we had the pleasure of being in New York to stand in front of a NASDAQ sign that had our logo on there as being acquired by a company called reAlpha. And we were courted and acquired as a mortgage brokerage by a real estate technologies company that is looking at the full implication of the real estate transaction and how they can just do it efficiently and effectively. Saw us, got to know the culture of Be My Neighbor Mortgage, got to know the leadership, and said, we want to partner here. So we were signing on the dotted line and taking the photos to celebrate.
Mic drop. I mean, I am fascinated by this. So let's go deeper on the story of Be My Neighbor.
Go deeper.
Not
you
a
asked me
big
the
mortgage
questions.
brokerage, but like you guys are a mortgage brokerage.
No.
Chris Griffith's been running this business. Chris is familiar to many folks in this powerhouse audience. He's been on our stage before. He's been a vocal voice, particularly on VA lending and the mortgage brokerage space. But here you are on the NASDAQ. First of all, you do very rarely see M&A of mortgage brokerages. You never see a couple folks from North Texas up there on the NASDAQ talking about a deal with a technology company. So what's the story of Be My Neighbor? And let's go deeper into what this means for the business and like what mortgage execs should take away from this story.
Sure. Okay. So let's start with the end in mind, right? Take away this. Do not discount the emails you get that you think are just junk. Like take a second to read each one before you pass on them. The bigger part is like Be My Neighbor. It started as Debt Does Deals and then merged with both Isabel Williams and Christopher came together, merged their two companies that we rebranded in 22 as Be My Neighbor Mortgage. And the idea, of course, I said 23 is Be My Neighbor Mortgage. And the idea there, of course, was that no borrower left behind and that we have this real big concept that home ownership is the fastest, best way for generational wealth to be created by anybody. If they can get into a home, keep the home, generational wealth statistically follows along. And so that's just been our mission and our focus and our growth. In last year in 23, while things were getting tough, we were heavily in production of purchase loans, always have been. And we just said, heck, we're going to figure out and we're going to double down and just grow. So we added a number of states. We ended 23 at, I believe, 25 states. We added 13. We doubled in size. We added a few different loan officers to our form. We run a brokerage, what I call a quasi-owned brokerage from soup to nuts, right? When a loan comes in, we do have internal processing teams. We keep it clean and organized and well structured so that by the time we get to funding with the third-party originating wholesale lender that has been chosen for the benefit of the borrower, and our 2023 numbers and our 2024 show, we look everywhere. We will work with lots of different wholesalers. We're not pigeonholed into any one channel. And so we had a really strong pull-through rate and a really strong reputation there. And so the culture was really focused, and of course, VA lending. Christopher and I partnered up and launched Vetted VA, and that's how a lot of people have known us together. But then, as I've been working at chief of staff and strategy with Be My Neighbor, that was my role in there as more of operations. With Isabel, who's like just a guru when it comes to lending, and so the structure just coming together that we had something special, and then we were thinking about what does the future look like, and we were having conversations. Is there a place to be acquired? Is there a place to merge? What does that look like? What does that feel like? Do we want to try to merge somebody into us, or are we willing to merge into something else? And we had multiple conversations with multiple different people, and really kind of gotten to a point of like, we know what to do to grow. We don't know this is the right answer everywhere. And then a random email came through that said, hey, this is reAlpha. We're looking at real estate technologies, and we'd like to talk to you. And Christopher and I both thought it was a scam, but we did some background on it because we were just open to the idea anyway. And so when we background and reached out and started the conversation, we were open, and then the conversation just kept rolling and ended up going a very positive way for everybody.
So reAlpha is a publicly traded technology company operating in the real estate space. They've done a couple deals before. HousingWire has covered their acquisition of AI Chat and Hyperfast. Yes. They've been acquiring and building capabilities in the technology space. Now we can all draw our own conclusions on like the strategy of acquiring a mortgage brokerage, but give us a glimpse into that. What value does Be My Neighbor bring to this technology company?
Well, at first blush too, in the conversation, they're like, look, we're not a mortgage lending company, but you are. Mortgage lending is a big part of this entire process. So if we are to get really effective in the life cycle of a loan, of a purchase transaction, of a sales transaction, a broker, a mortgage provider is one of those things. And so to work through the acquisition model, really understanding the fact that it was not a, hey, we want to take you over and have you do it our way, more of like, no, we'd like you to be part of our greater book of business. And so that everything, if somebody comes in, they could work with us from purchasing to title and escrow to where the future goes, right? What are the other ancillary divisions that should be part of this process, and mortgage lending being one part of them. It helps the entire retention model, and it's not unique. I know so many other brokers and IMBs and others that are investing their own work and effort into title and escrow, into third-party processing companies, into having their own insurance division. There's something strong about a SWOT analysis that includes we have ownership or invested interest in these other ancillary businesses. So the idea wasn't shocking or new or different. It was just that it was a tech company coming to us first. And that was a benefit of the department, I should say the NAR settlement and that change. And then looking at it going, what does this open up for us? We've already been building this tech in a different division. They were already focused on short-term rentals. They were focused on commercial real estate application, and then just kind of went, what could happen if we stood up and started competing against the Zillows of the markets and saying, what if we could help buyers acquire and work through this process in a efficient way? What does that look like? And so it's just all part of the whole pie.
So is it safe to say, and I'm, can definitely like direct this question to the right people at reAlpha at the right time. But like, it feels like when you kind of look at this combination, that this is a step toward an end-to-end solution that reAlpha wants to bring to the market, from property discovery to purchase to financing. And Be My Neighbor plays a role.
I wouldn't say it's just safe to say. I'd say that is the play. That's exactly end to end. This is a part of the process.
And because reAlpha is a public company, they have to do it 8K when they do a deal and explain the price and the structure. And it's very like normal. I thought the structure looked really like expected and smart, that there's some deferred components of it with restricted stock. So like there's now Be My Neighbor now has the owners of Be My Neighbor now have equity in reAlpha, and also some earnout components. So
Yes.
buying into this strategy is super important to being like agreeing and being comfortable with like that level of deferred deal structure.
Well, we all have to expect the win and focus on it, right?
Yep.
So, how do we get more efficient? Where do we start finding that the ideas are ideas until you put them to action, right? Every great plan is going to fail at first contact, and so then it's like, well, what's our backup plan? What is the next thing we do to succeed? And so, having a structure like they offered us, committed to it, showed us the commitment that they had to making this work, and the commitment to addressing the areas that were inefficient in the lending process, for especially for brokers. How could we be more efficient? How could we be more effective? And the bottom line, every single time we talked to them and they talked to us, it was always focused on the consumer. How does the consumer get better served with a more efficient, effective process that is strengthened with AI technologies, but still has the human capacity for understanding and reasoning and teaching to get through some of the hurdles that we face all the time in every file. So the earnout component was something that we were very excited about. It's an uncapped earnout opportunity. And so as it grows and we perform, we could get even better than the initial. And that's a beautiful thing. That's what people in the broker world are like, hey, that's how we get into lending. We eat what you kill kind of mentality, but if I can do better, why would you cap me? Like, let me go. Let's see what we can do.
So HousingWire, we hosted our AI summit this summer back in July, and there's a ton of talk around the way mortgage lenders and servicers specifically are integrating AI into their businesses. And servicing was definitely a front and center thing, like understanding, using AI to like fully understand your servicing portfolio, identify opportunities, increase recapture, and like create opportunities for consumers, either for lower rates or repeat purchases or home equity, whatever the need may be. Where do you think AI fits into the future of Be My Neighbor? Like, how does the reAlpha like expertise and capabilities flow into the mortgage origination process that I assume Be My Neighbor will continue operating?
Yes, we will. And I think it fits in a couple different places. Like we have clear to close, like our closing ratio is somewhere in the 27, 25 days. A lot of times we're CTC'd before that, but contracts being what they are, people don't want to close right away. So I think that finding a way through the process with AI, we want to ensure that every borrower that goes through this, we are finding and really facilitating any potential roadblocks early on. Can we use technology to identify where a problem might arise before the problem even gets there? And human analysis does a fantastic job of that, but only in as much as we understand from our experiences. Wisdom teaches us much. I would reference and say then that AI can sometimes do a better job of analyzing workflow and understanding that there may be a holdup, there may be a concern or a problem before it shows up. So analysis is just such a big takeaway. How do people buy? What if we could help people understand the market they're purchasing in and the impact to insurance rates on that market now and what's expected in the future before they write the offer? How many loans have died because the insurance binder coming back way too high? And everybody who told them like, no, you're going to be fine. But the data showed that it was climbing. Yep. Well, how do we take the feeling out of it and say, look, the AI modeling shows that the data is climbing. Here's the projected numbers, and we have this to pull from. And now the buyer's like, oh, I'm well aware of what's about to happen. And we as the lender and the broker can actually offset the numbers ahead of time so that when it comes to closing and they get their binder, it's not a shock. It's more of that's exactly what we thought it would be. Just one scenario where I think that this future forward thinking and analysis, AI strengthens that and does not hurt or harm or cause confusion on who's in control. It just literally makes the tool that much better.
That's a fabulous example, but also a very like current focus for lenders across the country, specifically if you're operating in coastal markets like Florida, where insurance has been blowing up purchases left and right. So really good application. So we booked this episode and started planning for this conversation before this
Yes.
big NASDAQ appearance. So let's hit on like one of the topic that we intended to tackle here, Nathan. So in addition to helping Chris and Isabel build Be My Neighbor, you are also the founder and CEO of a mortgage education company, which I've had the pleasure of getting a front and center view of watching you build here. And you even announced the launch of this new training company on the stage at the gathering this summer. So introduce MLO Force.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. And thanks for letting us be there on the stage with HousingWire's event. It was just a blast to be able to announce. We launched MLO Force because we, frankly, when it came up and the opportunity was there, CE is something that I enjoy doing. And I know how horrible that sounds to most of the audience. But there's something about my nature. I enjoy teaching compliance and law in a way that people will listen to. And speaking of which, I'm not a lawyer, nor am I an attorney. So maybe that helps because I'm not stuck with like, if I say something wrong, I'm going to get blasted. But, continuing education is something we all have to barrel through. We look at the calendar, kids go back to school. We're checking out what the fall's changing and the leaves are changing. We're like, oh no, it's about time to do the NMLS CE. I enjoyed doing it in the past, and the opportunity arose when Christine Beckwith started speaking with me and talking to me about 2020 Vision Your Success coaching, where she saw that going, and that she wanted to be in the CE game, but really didn't know how to get into it, and started dialoguing with me about what that would. And frankly, the people, it all aligned, where the team was able to come together. We were able to build up and launch a CE company in about 6 months with a new LMS structure that had not been used in this capacity before. You do it our way, which is video-based. It is conversational. It is, of course, abiding by all the NMLS guidelines. We are showing, and the CSBS and the ARMOR, or their multi-state mortgage committee, when they say, hey, these are the topics you got to talk about. So we cover it all, but we try to do it in a way similar to how you and I are doing it here, that we discuss, we have dialogue. It's podcast, it's video, so you can watch it, you can engage with it, and you can learn from it. And hopefully by the end of 8 hours, you're not, thinking that was the worst time of my life, but you're going, hey, that really wasn't too bad.
Well, we all know CE is nothing new. So what's the differentiator? How is MLO Force different than what's out there in market? And how does that align with what originators actually want or maybe they're ambivalent about? I don't know. But what's the strategy and how does it match the market need?
The strategy is, of course, what if we create something that people, it's almost like they would choose to watch it if they could. That sounds strange, right? But people are listening to this podcast. And that is something that, I don't know about you, I take in podcasts and audiobooks all the time. So being able to sit down,
I've been just shocked at how many thousands of people out there actually are like nerdy and enough and love the housing market enough to listen to this podcast. So they're out there, Nathan. They're out there.
It's an hour at a time, 45 minutes at a time. And I want to get this inset of data that's coming to me while I'm driving, while I'm working out, while I'm doing whatever it is I'm doing. Now, NMLS requires that you to pay attention. And so no video is longer than 5 minutes. And we have to, check in with you. And if you're doing the online, you're doing biosig, and everybody's rolling their eyes when they think about that. I get it. I have to do my own. But as a licensed individual, look, I know how painful it is. And so what we try to do is share real-time stories, real-time case studies, affect the thought process of what if, or what about me? Does my business look like this? If we would share a case study of compliance nightmares or regulatory action, the question really is, could you have been found guilty of the same thing? Even with the best intent, does your business model allow you to make ethical and true decisions by following the laws and the rules? Are you thinking through them the right way? So the differentiator is not lecture style, not just one person giving you a script and telling you, here's what I think and all the things. I've taught college courses before. I've had to be that person. That's hard to do. Instead, more of, look, we're going to cover this. We're going to do it together. We're going to talk about it and try to dialogue about it. And then we bring in some other special guests. Like we had Goliath Cybersecurity on. That's a fantastic group out of Florida, backed by some former FBI agents and people that have been in CISO roles for decades that understand what's going on, and just have a dialogue about, okay, how does cyber affect fair lending rules and antitrust and AML BSA and Gramm-Leach-Bliley? Like, where are we going to lose it? And then have something like where HUD comes out this year even and says, hey, by the way, if you have a cyber event, guess what? Now we're going to be in your business as well. Not just the FTC, not just the FCC, not all these. And so having that dialogue, and then working with Bob Simpson of Daylight AML, this guy has decades of doing fraud research for MI companies and servicers. And he starts talking about AML BSA. There's a whole hour in there with just him sharing stories that I was like, Bob, this is crazy. Like, I could tell you about AML BSA, and here he is telling stories about it where he's actually done investigations. And what were the red flags that were missed? How could we have done a better job? And so just finding the experts, finding the people to talk through this information and making it engaging. Is it overhyped? No. Is it over funny? Nope. It is just real life conversation had between a couple people. We spend 2 hours talking about the VA loan with my partner, Christopher Griffith. We spend, a couple hours talking about ethics and dive into, utilitarianism, Machiavellian, just all these different ethical standpoints, and go like, how does, which one do you have, and how does that apply to your decision making when you're trying to originate loans for people? It's crazy.
That's really interesting. So I started my career at a bank that, had a pretty robust training ecosystem. Some of it required, some of it voluntary. And they had a name for the people who actually did the voluntary stuff. So willing learners. And not the most compelling name, but it meant something that you were someone who was actually going out and looking to better yourself with education, opposed to just checking the box on what's required. Yeah. What does the mortgage industry have willing learners who are out there actually wanting to consume? And does that make them better originators, or does it just help them check the box faster?
I had a great conversation with Dale Vermillion the other day, and we were talking on his podcast. And as we talked through it, he used the term expert for me, and I cringe. I cringe at that term. I cringe because an expert in the eyes of maybe the common community would be somebody who just thinks they're above it all. I mean, that's what I worry that people think that term means. For me, somebody who's an expert in their field has come to the realization that I know so much, but there is so much more to know, that I will always be looking for something else to learn, always be hungry, always be driving to the next thing. What did I forget? What did I used to know and I need to remember that I can apply going forward? So a willing learner, like you have pointed out, does it make a difference? 100%. I think if you were to go into CoreLogic, go into RETR. I just mentioned two competitors. I'm sorry. Go into
not competitors to me. CoreLogic's great partner of ours. I actually had the pleasure of meeting the founders of RETR this morning. So that's
perfect. Well, yeah. I mean, you look at those guys, and I was just sitting here going, Clayton, oh no, you've got data analytics too, but it's different. Okay, good. We're safe. Looking at any of those data sets, if you start pulling numbers on who are the top performers in the industry in certain segments, in certain loan types, and you were just to pick up the phone and say, what do you do to be proficient? What do you do to be successful in this way? I would bet you most of the books on my bookshelf, if you wanted me to ship them to you, that they would all say, I'm always learning something. I'm always asking questions, and I'm always double checking. Did I know what I think I know? Was I right or was I wrong, or how could I be better? I mean, it's the core fundamental that we built Vetted VA on. It's the core fundamental with which we drive Be My Neighbor. It's the core fundamental that we put behind MLO Force. It's not that I'm teaching you something new. It may be that I'm reminding you of a truth that you forgot. And you're just refreshing. I grew up hunting and fishing and doing all those things. And every time you go out and have fun, you got to come home and sharpen your knife.
Yep.
You got to come home and sharpen the axe. We'd go hiking and camping, and I'd have my axe and I would chop wood, and it was like, oh, such a man. You get back and it's like, oh, don't forget, you got to clean up your kit. You got to put it away. You got to sharpen your axe, because the next time you need it, it's got to be ready to go. You don't stop to sharpen it before you use it. You sharpen it when you're done using it. So the next time in an emergency or an action, that's training. That's a willing learner. We take a moment, we step aside, we sharpen our axe. That's a Abraham Lincoln, I think. It's like, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I'll spend the first 3 sharpening my axe. Or
I think
I
just
just
first
butchered
5
that
or something.
Yeah. It's just, it's a ridiculous amount, right?
Yeah.
But the reality being, I get through it faster when it's sharp, when it's ready, when I'm structured, rested, all those things. That's a willing learner. So do they make a difference? 100%. And if you're sitting here and going, I don't have time for my CE, then I'm telling you, you're taking the wrong CE. Because you have to have time for it. You've got to take it, and it shouldn't make you want to poke your eye out with the pen sitting on your desk. You should be able to sit there and go, I hadn't thought about that. Maybe I should think about that.
And just because you haven't thought about it, though, doesn't make you not an expert. So like coming back to your conversation with Dale, one of the things that I see often as a business leader and someone who employs a lot of people is I hire subject matter experts. I hire people for their expertise. But then you see that like layer of humility come through where people like to, play down their experience and skill set. It's like, well, I'm not an expert in this. I was like, no, you are. That's why I hired you for this. And like, I see you execute. You are the expert. I also see that in mortgage originators and real estate professionals who sometimes downplay the expertise that they have because there's a high degree of humility, or they think that others around them might know more. They haven't sharpened their axe quite enough. And I think it's really important for professionals in our industry and across business to recognize the expertise they have, and the higher degree of experience and knowledge that you gain. It may feel like there's more you don't know. That's a good thing. That means, you have intellectual curiosity, but it doesn't mean you're not an expert. So I do really want to reinforce that, we have a lot of experts in this industry. That's not a bad thing. It's something they should be proud of, and then be prepared to offer advice and guide clients to outcomes with that expertise without being too humble or too much humility, but a little bit helps.
I hear that. Now I'll take that, but I'll wrap that up to what we talked about at the top of the episode too. If you heard about Be My Neighbor and reAlpha and you're thinking an AI company in real estate is doing what? Look, I do not think it's going to replace us. I think it's going to allow us to be better. I think it's going to change the tool set with which we serve. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe in 30 years. And honestly, I graduated high school in 1998. And on my senior video, I said I was going to be a music teacher. Guess what? I tried that. I never once thought I would actually be in mortgages, nor did I think I'd sit in front of a camera and teach regulation law by reading the law and just trying to apply it to real life. I could never imagine that was going to be a thing that could be done, because in 98, there was no YouTube and there was no online presence like it is now. 20 years from now, down the road, when we're looking back at our industry and we're like, wow, I never thought I'd be able to do, I can't even imagine it, to give the analogy of a thing, right? There's going to be something, and we'll have tools that will have gotten us there. So, but decision-making doesn't happen in a vacuum. I really think it's not always a binary decision. So sometimes we have to apply human knowledge and understanding to a complex situation where, maybe the decision, maybe ultimate actions are being done by an AI or by a quote unquote robot, but the human condition has to be applied to the understanding, the application of it long term. And so you take all that. I mean, we even framed this year's CE. Before all this came out, we were thinking about it. Sawyer Wren and I just sat down and said, look, this is blast to the future. We are going to think through, how do the problems of yesterday apply to the future of where we're going? How do we start thinking positively into, I don't want to commit the fraud last year or the last decade of fraud into the future, but also I've got new tools to commit more fraud with. So you got to be aware. How are we going to get into that? How are we going to keep our head on a swivel?
So Nathan, we've tackled the acquisition. We talked about MLO Force. Can I close us out on kind of a reframe of a question that was posed to me this morning? So kind of a little brainstorm with you here, but so with MLO Force, we're talking about continued education, and in our industry in mortgage, there's a lot of people who are coming in from outside the industry. So at HousingWire, it might have a marketer who's coming in from a different field, but is now marketing to mortgage professionals, doing audience dev to mortgage professionals. Software companies are hiring account execs and implementation folks and engineers every day, and now are building tools for the mortgage company. Mortgage people or mortgage banks are hiring like processors and other like ops and support roles from outside the industry. Mm-hmm. Where do these people from outside the industry, how do they get started on learning about mortgage? Like is there a mortgage 101 out there? Like I was trying to answer this question today. And like I have a mortgage 101 class that I teach new employees at HousingWire, but it's not enough.
Oh, nice.
And then there's like, I say, hey, go to events, like come to our IMB summit and sit in the front row. Don't work like for my employees, like don't work the event, go sit and listen, or go to the MBA event in October and sit and listen. Those are some of the things I advise people to do. But like, do you have any advice for like where newcomers to this mortgage industry get started on on understanding the fundamentals of origination and how that might flow to servicing and capital markets? And like, where do you get started here before you're a licensed originator doing CE?
That's such a great question and a tough one to tackle because everything about this industry is OJT. It's all on the job training, always. I started in 2007 because we bought our first house. I was a manager for Starbucks. I'd been building my way up through college into Starbucks. I was managing, and a regular customer walk in 2006, go, "You want to buy a house?" Like, I got to sell my house. I'm like, yeah, doesn't everybody want to? I don't know how to do this. And, ended up doing 100% financing, 80-20.
Hold tight. You said you bought your first house because a customer came into Starbucks and asked if you wanted to buy one?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good story.
Yeah. And I bought it for under market, thankfully, because when the market fell, I wasn't quite as underwater as everybody else. But the whole experience was like, what did I just do? And how much money did they just make on me? Like, wait a minute. I could make that money. And I remember my first day finally getting a license. I worked for a local broker shop in Salem, Oregon. And Dave Hafner came in and he goes, "Look, man, things are about to change. The market's doing some weird stuff." It was May of 2007. He said, "Just focus on FHA, VA, and conventional loans, 20% down. Don't listen to everything else." I'm like, okay, I have no idea what I'm going to do. But I listened to him. I just did those things. And the first loan, man, that was tough. I still remember it. Second loan, it's at bats. And you literally, I think your recommendation to your team to sit in the front row and listen is the thing. You're learning a new language. So immersion learning is amazing. I would say you hop on YouTube and you just start listening. Not that the people are right, but that they're telling you something. And sometimes it's marketing, but sometimes it's actually, good information. And you just start absorbing it just like you would a foreign language. You want to put yourself inside the communication of it. And then you look around, there's some amazing people right now. Dion Bass at asktheunderwriter.net. I want to say she's phenomenal, has just such a rich history, and she wants loan officers to learn as much as they can. You take some CE courses, learn about the law from us at MLO Force. Like, well, how does Graham Leach Bliley, why does the FTC care about this thing? What's a fair lending and FICRA and HMDA and all these things? Like, why? What do we care about? You've got
that's the scary part for me about sending people just to an event to start learning, because they don't know what HMDA is yet. So I think I feel like there's a problem to solve here. Like, that's what I think there's an education problem to solve, and like in starting from the 0 to 1 education curve. And I just thought you'd be an interesting person to talk to.
I can tell you how, in 2025, MLO Force will more than likely have our 20-hour pre-licensing course out. And that would probably be your best way to start, because every loan officer has to take a 20-hour course. And what is it other than a crash course in the philosophy of what you're about to do? Here are the laws you must abide by. Here's who's in control. And here's some of the stuff you need to know. But outside of that, man, mentors and opportunity to listen and learn, and read HousingWire, of course.
Yeah, well, I like that
front to back, day to day.
So, Nathan, I will see you in Dallas on October 1st for the IMB Summit. I know Chris and Isabel are going to listen to this. So Chris, Isabel, congratulations on this deal. Really an exciting one, but it sounds like the most exciting pieces are yet to come. So we'll be watching this reAlpha, Be My Neighbor integration closely. And finally, Nathan, if people want to learn more about MLO Force, where should they go? What should they do?
MLOforce.com. Check it out. Feel free to register. Registering to get into our site is free. You can look around if you need your CE. We've got some great opportunities for you. And I'll just say MLO Force Friend is the code. It'll get you 15% off the market price there. And thanks for HousingWire for everything you guys do to just even allow me to be on here to talk about it. It means the world. So,
and so if people go to MLO Force, is that best for like originators who want to like purchase their CE for themselves directly, or does that work for like for branches or mortgage banks who want to send bulk in? Like how do you sell differently between like individual versus enterprise?
I appreciate that. So yes, individuals, MLOforce.com. If you want to buy or enterprise level with us, feel free to send me an email, Nathan@MLOforce.com, or contact us through the website. It's very simple pricing. It's 8 hours for $99 off the shelf, or use your 15% discount, makes it like 85. Or all you can take. We priced out this all you can take at $149. And I mean, it's all you can take of CE, the 8 hours, all the states. It's unlimited. We just lift the lid off of it and say, take what you want for $149 or 15% off makes it $127. So that's there. And honestly, enterprise pricing is just, it's off the shelf pricing minus 15%. We keep it really simple and make it really handy. We can even put people in a branded LMS instance so your people know where they're at and who they're being trained by, and work out the payment details with you on the side.
Pretty cool. Nathan, congratulations on the big week. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.